On News Radio 970 WFLA's Bob Lassiter.
Right. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. For thine is the kingdom come, that will be done on earth as it is in heaven. One nation, under God, liberty, justice for all.
Minutes after the hour of 12 noon, how heartening to open the show with the Lord's Pledge. Welcome in. It is a Wednesday, October the 19th, 1988. Lassiter with you. Make that mad dog, if you will, on News Radio 970 WFLA until 3 this afternoon, as we are every miserable weekday afternoon. Like it or not, take it or leave it, right here at the old radio station. Do you believe in God? Do you? Okay, well, according to a poll now, whose poll is this? Let me see here. It's one of the big ones. What difference does it make? It's one of the big ones. Gallup. Okay, according to Gallup, nationwide, overwhelming majority of you say that you do. Okay, do you believe in the prophets? That is, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, et cetera, et cetera. Why, probably almost all of you do. Of course you do. Do you believe in the Bible? Well, according to this poll, nationwide, almost all of you say you do. Nationwide, 38% say that it is the actual Word of God. 45% say it's the inspired Word of God. Only 13% said, it's a book written by men. Protestants, by the way, fall into 46% say it's the actual Word of God. Catholics, 31%. Of the men, 33%. Of the women, 41%. Of those who went to college, only 17%. Of those who went to high school, 42%. Of those who only went to grade school, 60%. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the South, 49%, by the way. In the evil East, only 27%. Would you shake someone's dipstick in order to seal a deal? Yeah, you heard me right. Well, would you grab them by the family jewels in order to show good faith? What's the problem here? Come on, boys and girls. Why not? What, pray tell, is the problem? Permit me to read something to you. It's from the good book. The one that Ronald Reagan says contains all the wisdom of the world. I refer you specifically to Genesis 24, verses 1 through 9. And Abraham was old and well stricken in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said unto his eldest servant of his house, that ruled over all that he had, Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven, and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of my Canaanites, etc., etc., etc. Put your hand under my thigh. The New Standard Bible Dictionary, in an article on oath on page 630, says, in exceptional cases, the hand might be placed under the thigh of the person imposing the oath as a sign of regard for the mystery of generation, whose source was God. The Encyclopedia Biblica says thigh refers to the generative organ. That's in volume 3. It becomes clear that then the man swearing the oath would grasp the penis or the testicles or both of the other male as part of the affirmation. And before the death of Israel, or Jacob as the case may be, he called his son Joseph to the deathbed, and as Joseph grasped his father's penis, Israel made his son promise that he would take his remains out of Egypt and bury him in the land of his fathers. So like I said, most of you guys believe this stuff. Why are you, horrified by this? Come on, if it was good enough for God's guys, why isn't it good enough for you? If the Bible is God's word, or at least inspired by God, and if the Bible is meant to teach us how to do things, right? That's the whole purpose of the Bible, right? It's to teach you how to do things. Teach you, you don't murder, you don't steal, you don't commit adultery, you do grab somebody's penis when you want to, affirm an oath. If it's included in the Bible, not just once, but several times, then God must have meant for us to do it. Where have we gone wrong? When was the last time somebody whipped out the family jewels and said, hey, shake on it? I don't understand. I mean, how can you say that you believe in the Bible and yet go, ooh, shake somebody's family jewels, no, ooh. Now, we're supposed to respect people's religious beliefs, right? So if a guy whips out his old Wang dang Doodle and says, let's shake on it, who are you to say, no, ooh, I don't want to touch that thing? I mean, come on, boys and girls. You guys say you want the right to believe what you want, right? And you want to freely practice your beliefs without interference from the non-believers. Well, my word, there it is, right in the Bible. I mean, these are God's guys. Abraham, Jacob, David. Now, as I recall, Jesus said in Matthew, right there in Matthew, he said, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, and neither has done so, right? Not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commandments will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. How can you possibly sit there and say, ooh, I don't want to touch that? How can you possibly say, ooh. I mean, boys and girls, it's right there. I mean, do you suppose that, well, you know, that brings up all kinds of interesting possibilities. Do you suppose that we can keep the virgins when we take over the godless commies? I mean, come on. God said, you go in, you wipe out the godless people, you can bring home the cows, and you can bring home the virgins. Could that be the real intent behind the fundamentalist desire to get the commies? I mean, all these guys running around Ollie North and, there's Swaggart and that whole crowd, especially that guy Robertson up there in Virginia Beach. Get the commies, get the commies, get the commies. I mean, Lord knows that virgins are in mighty short supply around here these days. Might be the only way. Just think. Just sit back in your chair for one moment and think about how happy the boys down at the First Church of the Everlasting Hope for the Return of the Savior Incorporated would be with a boatload of rusky virgins all of their own, all for themselves. I wonder who gets to keep the virgins that the Contras win in Nicaragua. I mean, hey, it's our money, right? I think we should get a piece of the action, so to speak. Somebody say amen, okay? Hallelujah. And while we're at it, why don't we bring back the test for unfaithful wives? Have you ever heard about the test for unfaithful wives? Let me see if I can quickly find it here. I've got it here someplace. It's one that you'll probably want to keep around the house, too. No. Let's see. No, that's virgins is spoiled. I'll find it. Just a second. You guys talk amongst yourselves. Oh, here it is. Here it is. This is great. You girls are going to love this. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, If any man's wife go aside and commit a trespass against him, and a man lie with her carnally, and it be hid from the eyes of her husband, and be kept close, and she be defiled, and there be no witness against her, neither she be taken with the manner, and the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be defiled, or if the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be not defiled, then shall the man bring his wife unto the priest, and he shall bring her offering for her, the 10th part of an epith, I guess that's pronounced, of barley meal. I don't know where they come up with these offerings, but that's what it says here. I'm not making this stuff up. And he shall bring her offering for her, the 10th part of an epith of barley meal. He shall pour no oil upon it. That's very important. Don't put any oil on the barley. Nor put frankincense thereon. So please, keep your frankincense at home there. For it is an offering of jealousy, an offering of memorial, bringing inequity to remembrance. And the priest shall bring her near and set her before the Lord. And the priest shall take holy water in an earthen vessel, very important, an earthen vessel. Make sure it's not, Tupperware or something. And of the dust that is on the floor of the tabernacle, the priest shall take and put it into the water. And the priest shall set the woman before the Lord and uncover the woman's head and put the offering of memorial in her hands, which is the jealousy offering. And the priest shall have in his hand the bitter water that causeth the curse. And the priest shall charge her by oath, and say unto the woman, if no man have lain with thee, and if thou hast not gone aside to uncleanliness and another instead of the husband, be thou free from this bitter water that causeth the curse. But if thou hast gone aside to another instead of thy husband, and if thou be defiled, and some man have lain with thee besides thine husband, then the priest shall charge the woman with an oath of cursing. And the priest shall say unto the woman, the Lord make thee a curse and an oath among thy people, when the Lord doth make it thy thigh to rot, and thy belly to swell. And this water that causeth the curse shall go into thy bowels to make thy belly to swell, and thy thigh to rot. And the woman shall say, Amen, amen. And the priest shall write these curses in a book, and he shall blot them out with the bitter water. And he shall cause the woman to drink the bitter water that causeth the curse, and the water that causeth the curse shall enter into her and become bitter. Then the priest shall take the jealousy offering out of the woman's hand, and shall wave the offering before the Lord, and offer it upon the altar. And the priest shall take a handful of the offering, even the memorial thereof, and burn it upon the altar, and afterward shall cause the woman to drink the water. And when he hath made her to drink the water, then it shall come to pass that she shall be defiled, and have done trespasses against her husband, that the water that causeth the curse shall enter into her and become bitter, and her belly shall swell, and her thigh shall rot. And the woman shall be a curse among her people, and if the woman be not defiled, but be clean, then she shall be free and shall conceive seed. This is the law of jealousy, is when a wife goes aside to another instead of her husband and is defiled, or when the spirit of jealousy cometh upon him, and he be jealous over his wife, and shall set the woman before the Lord, and the priest shall execute upon her all this law. Then shall the man be guiltless from iniquity, and the woman shall bear her iniquity. Somebody say amen. I'm sorry, girls. I must report to you that there is no test for unfaithful husbands. It apparently was an oversight. I mean, God was busy, making the world and all that kind of stuff, and he was giving out rules about, how to trim your beard and how to go to the bathroom in the desert and, how to plow the fields, and he forgot. I guess he forgot to come up with a test for unfaithful husbands, but gosh, guys, wouldn't it be great to go back to those good old days? I wonder when God changed his mind about the test for unfaithful wives. Some of you people are probably sitting out there saying, okay, Lassiter, all right, okay, you son of Satan, Lassiter. You got us on, some of this stuff. Okay, you got us on the talking snakes, and you got us on the magicians who can make frogs, just like God's guys can, and you got us on the secret handshake, that's for sure. Whoa, I didn't know about the secret handshake. But if this stuff is stupid, and I think most of you would agree that it is, wouldn't you? Of course you would. Why aren't the other things in the book just as bizarre? I mean, is it reasonable to ask someone to swear on a book full of rape and plunder and secret handshakes and instructions for dealing with your slaves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Is it reasonable to ask someone to swear on a book like that to promise to tell the truth? Is it unfair to assume that someone who says that he believes every word in the Bible, you know the kind, God said it, I'll believe it, and that's the end of the argument. Is it unfair to assume that someone who says that he believes every word in the Bible is either not playing with a full deck or some turkey who's never read it? I mean, who wants to be the first poor soul to step forward and say that he sees nothing wrong with these things? Absolutely nothing wrong, and he believes especially that test for the unfaithful wife. While we're waiting for the phones to fill up, I'll share a few more with you. Then tell me that it's your kind of book and something that belongs in the public schools in this nation, the courtrooms in this nation, along with the rest of the world's so-called collective wisdom to be found therein. Let's start out in Genesis, a great book. Genesis, one of my favorites. You remember there was the evil talking snake, and he, kind of talked to Eve, the woman, of course, into eating from the tree of knowledge and so forth and so on. Well, anyway, the Lord said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon the belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. That's Genesis 3:14, by the way, for those of you who are keeping track along with your Bibles at home. Why would a serpent be cursed because Satan assumed the shape of one? Did you ever bother to ask yourself that? And how did serpents move about before they were set on their bellies? Did you ever ask yourself about that one? Probably not, but that's okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? It's a fascinating book, just fascinating. Okay. Oh, yeah, here's a great one. And all the souls that came out of the loins, remember loins again? Hey, see, there it is again. Put your hand under my loins. Well, of all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. For Joseph was in Egypt already, and the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses, I guess that is, to Succoth, I suppose, about 600. By the way, you remember the Queen of Sheba, don't you? Can anybody tell us where Sheba is? I didn't think so. Anyway, what were we saying here? From 20 years old and upward, all that were able to go forth to war in Israel, even all they that were numbered, were 600,000 and 300 and 550. But the Levites, after the tribe of their fathers, were not numbered among them. Now, do you realize that the women would have had to have had something in the neighborhood of 66 children each to come up with those kind of numbers? But, nah, it's okay. Oh, my goodness, there's one there on the phone. Jeffrey in Pinellas Park. Hi, Jeffrey. You're on the air.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, listen, I don't want to defend it.
Oh, okay.
But I was married to a lady who believed every word as it was written.
Didn't she ever give you the secret handshake?
God, she gave me a lot of stuff, but I don't know if the secret handshake was one of them.
Did her father believe it too?
Yeah.
Did he give you the secret handshake?
I married her after she had been really indoctrinated with this stuff during childhood. And I met her when she was in college and during a rebellious period from this. And I'm a nice Jewish boy. And I had no exposure to
wait a second.
Christianity or...
Well, wait a This isn't Christian. This comes out of your book. This is the Old Testament. You know, Abraham was your guy, remember?
Yeah, no. I'm a Reformed Jew, and I think that the stories in the Bible are stories.
What do you mean?
Are stories that you can possibly learn things from, but that it's not a book meant to be taken verbatim. I'm a Reformed Jew.
You mean you like some parts of it and not other parts?
Well, as a Reformed Jew, I think that some of the things, you have to consider how many authors there were, and these were feelings.
Jeffrey, do you believe in religious freedom?
Oh, of course.
Do you believe in respecting other people's religious beliefs?
Absolutely.
Then how about if some guy comes up to you and whips out the old Wang Dang Doodle and says, let's shake on it? Do you want to, go along with him?
No, Bob. Not now. No, of course not.
Oh, then you don't respect other people's religious beliefs.
Of course I do. I mean, I can respect their beliefs, but I don't have to practice them. There's a difference between respecting someone's religious beliefs and being made to practice or conform to them.
Wouldn't you love to be the ACLU attorney who goes into court defending a couple of gay dudes who got caught holding each other down there in the city park? And they say, well, wait a second.
Hey,
wait a second.
Yeah.
We got this out of the Bible. We're practicing our religion here.
I'm sure he'd have a field day. But there's something even more special than this.
I don't see anything more special than, somebody coming up and shaking your Wang Dang Doodle.
It depends upon who shook it.
Well, I suppose.
I'd like to, be serious here for a second, Bob. I mean...
Sure as hell wouldn't want Cleveland Wheeler, for example, shaking my Wang Dang Doodle.
I bet. Well, can we be serious for a second, Bob?
I thought we were being. Go ahead.
Hey, it's this hysteria okay, that is whooped up by these. They're not just right-wing. I mean, charismatic Christianity, taken to its nth degree, is like Jim Jones. And I've seen it. I mean, like nice little charismatic Assembly of God churches that are just right there on the edge of that Jim Jones.
Well, but Jeff, well, no, I think you're getting apples and oranges mixed up here. We're not talking about giving me,
Bob.
We're not talking about give me your Social Security check. We're talking about following what almost everybody in the country concedes is the Word of God, the good book, the thing that this nation was founded on.
Yeah, but
don't you think we should
a lot of people who say that, number one, understand the chronological history and the origins of that book, and they certainly don't understand the words. Okay, they can't put what was written into perspective.
Ah, come on, Jeffrey. If somebody says, hey, put your hand on my loins, you know what he's talking about.
Oh, well, you know what they'll say? That Jesus came to not break the law, but to fulfill the law.
Well, but they don't finish reading the passage because it goes on to say, I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law.
Bob, where are you coming from today? I mean,
The studios where I normally broadcast from, 801 East Jackson.
Oh, you dog. Listen, I mean, I'm trying to say that some of these people take it literally as it was written.
Well, I'm saying, if they
why
do...
do you think we have the Crusades?
But that's my whole point. If we do take it literally, don't you think we should bring back, for their purposes,
all the way.
Don't you think we should bring back some of the good old practices that apparently made God happy a few thousand years ago?
Sacrificing lambs. I mean, like, if we're really going to bring it back all the way, then I think we should be sacrificing little sheepies.
Do you know what the hell those damn things cost?
But, I mean, that's part of it.
When was the last time you saw a store full of doves?
And on top of that, the mikvah, the cleansing of the body. No, I mean, if we're going to bring back all of it, then these people have really fallen short of the glory of God because
Come on, Jeffrey.
They're not doing what God told them to do.
Jeffrey, wouldn't you like to bring back the good old test for unfaithful wives?
Oh, God. Give me a break, Bob.
You wouldn't? You wouldn't like to put your ex-wife through that?
I'm a Reformed Jew.
You wouldn't like to put your ex through that one?
I'd like to put my ex through a lot of things, but not that.
Ah, come on. Her belly swelling up, her thighs rotting.
It probably happened anyway.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Bob, you take care.
Be good. Night. John in Tampa. John, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah, Bob, as soon as I heard your introduction of yourself as Mad Dog, I suspected something was up, but I didn't really think you'd
I'm always called Mad Dog.
The Bible again.
I'm always called Mad Dog, John.
Well, okay. Just for your own clarification, there was a custom back in those days that was lost somewhere along the lines, and it was to put the hand under the thigh. They understood exactly what they were doing at the time that they were doing it, okay? And it wasn't in some kind of a grotesque, perverted way as what you're trying to portray it.
Well, now, wait, John, if I asked you to put your hand under my thigh, isn't there a pretty good chance that, you would touch something there? What do I keep under my thigh, John?
Okay, well, first of all, I would understand right off the bat that you didn't know what you were talking about.
I beg your pardon, John.
Okay, well, let me tell you, Bob. Back then it was a custom, okay, and taking an oath to signify by that if the oath was violated, then that man's children that weren't born yet, the unborn,
right? You held his Wang Dang Doodle.
That act of disloyalty.
Exactly.
Okay?
You held his Wang Dang Doodle so that his kids would be cursed.
No, the kids wouldn't be cursed. They would avenge that act of disloyalty. Abraham required this of his servant, okay, and then he sent him forth to get a wife for Isaac.
It was a very common practice. As a matter of fact, John, it still is a common practice in some areas in the Middle East.
With an understanding of exactly what they're doing and what it means.
Well, right. It was a pretty important part to them, so they asked people to hold it.
That's right. And what's wrong with an oath?
I don't remember saying there was anything wrong with it. I'm saying, shouldn't we bring it back?
Bring it back?
Well, sure. It made God happy at one point in history. Don't you think it would make him happy again?
No, I don't think it was done to make God happy. I think it was done because that was what that culture had done. I mean, it wasn't. God didn't require people to take an oath.
Now, wait a second, John. What is the Bible for? The Bible is to teach us the proper way to live, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this is mentioned in the Bible on at least 4 different occasions.
Okay,
so we would have to assume that it was important to God. And therefore, that he was trying to send us a message that this is the way he wanted people to seal a deal.
No. What he was trying to get across in my interpretation, okay, I'm not going to try to force you to believe what I'm saying, okay, but my interpretation is that God, first of all, wanted us to realize that an oath was something serious. It's like an oath of marriage. It's an oath, when you make an oath with somebody, that it was the real stuff. It's not
right, so that's why he wanted, to hold the guy's Wang Dang Doodle to show how important it was.
Because of the seriousness of it.
Exactly. So, aren't oaths still important and serious?
It signified that person's offspring, okay? And I think you understand that. I know that you're just trying to rouse some people up. I don't know, maybe your ratings got down, or you're trying to get back to your old self, or what. But well,
John, I think it's a very legitimate question. Don't you want to please God? Even I don't want to piss off God.
Come on, Bob. Seriously.
I am being serious, John. If it was good then, why isn't it good now? Well, when did God change his mind?
Tell me where the Bible says that that's the way that a person is supposed to make an oath to somebody.
Well, John, it's in there so often that we can only assume that it was, an important thing that God wanted to pass along.
There's a lot of things in there that were in there. It doesn't mean that that's what God intended for us to do.
For example?
Or told us to do.
For example?
Well, David's adultery, sending that wife's man to the front lines to get killed. God didn't want him to do that. That wasn't God's ideal.
Well, I know, but you see, when that story was told and there was some punishment, there was remorse and punishment and things like that, remember?
Yeah.
Well, there's no remorse and punishment for holding the guy's Wang Dang Doodle while you're making, an oath with him.
There wasn't any sin involved. There wasn't any...
Well, wait a second, John. If you got caught holding my Wang Dang Doodle, you want to tell me that that's not sin?
First of all, Bob, I wouldn't.
Well, why not?
Well, because that's not the way that I would make an oath with you. And it would be something that you and I would both have to understand and agree on.
Uh-huh.
Now, if you're going to come across and saying that shaking a man's penis is going to be perverted, then you didn't understand exactly what Abraham...
Well, wait a second, John. I haven't said that it was perverted. I'm simply, saying that people now would say it's perverted, and I don't understand.
You're right,
when did God change his mind about it? I mean, if it didn't displease him then, how come it displeases him now?
Oh, Bob.
I mean, if Mary let me buy the Continental, okay, and I was in the car dealership, and we arrived on the price, and I said, okay, I'll take it, and the car dealer and I stood up, and we shook each other's penises, we'd be arrested.
What oath would be involved in buying a car?
Well, making a deal. I agree to pay you X number of dollars for the car. Isn't that an oath? And you agree to deliver that car to me. Isn't that an oath?
No, that's a contract.
Well, isn't a contract an oath?
No,
I mean, an oath is only an old-fashioned word for a contract.
No.
When two people agree to something, they have made a contract.
Bob, you're a lot more intelligent than that, more educated than that. You realize the difference between an oath and a contract? Come on, when you take an oath to your wife, okay, you can also have a marriageable contract with her, but they're not the same.
Well, okay, then let me see if I can put it this way. When I asked Mary's father for Mary's hand in marriage, if he and I had stood up in the restaurant and shook penises, we'd be arrested, right? But when he promised to deliver to me his daughter in marriage, in holy matrimony, that was kind of like an oath, right?
Did he in fact do that? I mean, is this what took place?
Well, no, he wasn't around. He was in Davenport. But I'm saying, if that had happened.
Hypothetically, if you were to ask a man for his daughter, and the custom between you people there, wherever you were, America or wherever you were, was that he would deliver his daughter to you in marriage, then that would be an oath. Yeah.
And therefore you wouldn't object if we stood up in the restaurant and sealed that deal?
Yeah, I would.
You would?
Yeah, I would.
Why?
Well, first of all, I would because it was something that's done between you and that other man, and I don't believe that Abraham stood in the courtyard of 1,000 people with his son.
Well, there must have been somebody there. Somebody wrote it down in the book.
Well, sure.
Somebody witnessed it.
But what you're saying is in a public place in front of 1,000 people that don't have the faintest idea what you people are doing other than shaking each other.
Well, no. Wait a second here. Because, you see, there is, again, some precedence for doing that in front of large throngs of people. King David did it in front of large throngs of people. So there is some precedence there.
I'm not that familiar with it.
Oh.
As far as being done in large groups of people, it could have been. But it was also with an understanding of exactly what was going on. I mean, customs at that time were a little bit different than now. You might not realize that, but they really were.
Well, I mean, the only thing we're supposed to do is to please God, right?
The only thing that we're supposed to do is...
So if it pleased God then, if it didn't offend God then, why would it offend God now? Apparently, I guess what you're telling me is he's changed his mind.
Well, if I were to do something like that in front of you, it would obviously offend you.
Oh, I don't know. I probably find it hilarious.
Is not to offend you. He wouldn't want me to offend you.
I mean, I'd probably gag in laughter if I saw that.
That's right. Well, so then, in that case, then I wouldn't...
it wouldn't offend me.
God wouldn't want me to do that in front of you, I don't think, would he?
So, in other words, he has changed his mind about that kind of stuff.
I don't know. I don't know if God's changed his mind on that at all. I know that we have. I know that we, as a people here in the United States, aren't the same...
Oh, wait a second. Are you telling me that you're smarter than God?
By no means.
Well, then if it was okay with God, then it must be okay with him now, but you're telling me, hey, well, it's not okay with me now.
No,
I mean, are you more important?
No, I don't think so. It's like what you were saying about slaughtering the lambs, that you wouldn't want to do it because it's too expensive. Well, slaughtering the lambs was just a sign of the final slaughter and sacrifice of Jesus Christ, and there would be no more sacrifices required.
Well, no, according to the Bible, it was done because God loved the smell of sweet flesh burning. That's according to the Old Testament. Why? It says nothing in there about, the Savior. It says that God enjoyed the smell. Remember when Cain and Abel brought their offerings, and one brought vegetables and the other brought meat?
Yeah.
And God was pleased with the offering of meat because it smelled good to him, but he didn't like the vegetables.
That's right. He detested it.
Right. Don't bring vegetables to God.
See,
I had a lot in common. I prefer meat, too.
It was like a father looking down at his children and knowing one day that his children were actually going to come to him because of one final sacrifice. And I imagine that God...
But that's not what it says in the book. It says he liked the smell of burning flesh.
That's right, because he saw long term. He saw the day that Jesus died. Way back then, he could see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine a tear came out of his eye because of the joy that he knew that these children were going to come back to him because of his son dying is the final sacrifice. And every single time that there was a meat sacrifice...
Wait a second. Let me see if I understand this correctly. I don't... I don't want to get this incorrect, but we had God who sent his only son to die a miserable, cruel, mean death to atone for the sins of his other children that he created imperfect.
And not only that, he gave them
and then sent the supernatural being to tempt them. In the devil. So what you're telling me is that...
No, he didn't send Satan here.
A father requires the agonizing death of his only son as a victim before he can relinquish his vengeance on the sinners whom he made imperfect?
No, God's purpose in sending Satan here wasn't to tempt us. God's purpose in sending Satan to the earth was to expel him out of heaven because he rebelled against the authority of God.
Well, what was wrong with Mars? If he sent him to Mars, we wouldn't have all these problems, I guess, and then he wouldn't have had to kill his kid.
Why don't you ask God what was the matter with Mars?
Why don't you? 12:44 the time. Bob in St. Petersburg. Bob, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah, Bob, I thought you weren't going to bash Christians anymore and make fun of the Bible and all this, and you're right back on it, huh, bud?
Well, Bob, we didn't shake on it.
Not bash Christians anymore and make fun of the Bible and all this, and you're right back on it, huh, bud?
Well, Bob, we didn't shake on it. Yeah, but they're all based upon this Christian ethics and morality, right?
Yeah, but that
well, how can the Christians be against what God is for?
They're not. They're not against...
Well, it must be okay to shake penises to seal the deal, I guess.
No, because it would be against the law. And if it's against the law, then it's a sin.
But the law is based upon morality, right?
Right.
And morality comes directly from God, right?
Sure it does.
Well, then, if God's not against it, then it couldn't possibly come from God, so therefore it couldn't be immoral.
Yes, it could.
No, it couldn't.
Yes, it could.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Well,
where do all morals and ethics come from?
Morals and ethics come from society.
No, they come from God. Don't they? I think they do.
You think they do?
Well, that's what I'm told all the time.
I think that the Bible is a ground for us. It's not written directly from him.
Oh, so I see. So what was good for God's guys ain't good for you, huh? Oh, I'm not going to touch that.
No, I wouldn't touch it, would you?
Hey, it was okay for God's guys. Gary in Indian Rocks. Hi, Gary. You're on the air at 970 WFLA.
You know, Bob,
You there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'll be here till 3.
You gave us this long story not too long ago about how you'd watch TV and seen, stuff on TV.
People at the Morton Downey show.
And you would change your feeling on Christians and Christian beliefs.
No, that's not what I said at all, Gary.
Well, that about attacking believers and attacking what they believe in and stuff like that.
Well, actually, the entire thrust, if you'll pardon the expression, considering the topic today, the entire thrust of that speech, as you refer to it, I would call it a monologue, was that the liberals in this country who are trying to regain influence and power would be wise not to jump on things like this. I'm not trying to gain influence or power.
Well,
I call absurdity where I find it.
Well, it just seems to me, Bob, that that it just seems to me that you've gone back on your word.
Well, you can, like I told the last caller, we didn't shake on it, did we?
Well, I guess it's anything for ratings, and
no, Gary, it's not anything for ratings. I think it's a very valid question. If every word in the Bible is true, if every word in the Bible is the word of God, I don't understand why you people who say you believe the Bible are, taking your own personal prejudices and saying, "Oh, I'm not going to do that."
Well, Bob,
it seems to me you should, if it was okay with God then, it's probably okay with God now. He doesn't change his mind, does he, Gary?
Well, I don't suppose, but Bob, what I'm trying...
You see, nowhere in the Bible does it say it's an abomination in God's eyes, or if you do this, I'm going to strike you down. Now, God goes to a great deal of trouble in the Bible telling people what kind of house to live in, how to plow a field, what crops to plant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, just endless, on and on and on.
It was a custom back then.
Uh-huh.
And, it's not valid for today, and I wouldn't...
Well, then why do you think God included it in the Bible if it's not valid?
Because it's changed. The Bible was written for the people at that time, and it was a basic outline.
Gary, I beg your pardon. My understanding of it is the Bible is an eternal book. It's written for people of all times, right?
Let me finish what I was starting to say. It was written, for people in that time, and there's an outline there for future generations, but not every word of that Bible is for every...
Then wait a second. Then I don't have to, this was all for those old people, and I don't have to pay any attention to any of the stuff in here.
Well, the whole Old Testament, Bob, has been fulfilled. That's, other than just for,
I beg your pardon. According to the New Testament, it hasn't.
Other than, for historical reference.
Sir, I beg your pardon. Do you have your Bible handy by any chance?
No, I'm at work.
Oh, I would refer you when you get home to Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 17.
I know what it says. It says, not one jot or tittle will pass from the law until all these words are fulfilled.
Exactly, and they haven't been. They haven't rebuilt the temple, have they?
No.
So I guess all the words haven't been fulfilled yet. So therefore, all of the Old Testament laws are still valid.
I don't know, Bob. It just seems kind of, maybe there are inconsistencies in it. I'm not going to sit and argue with you because I believe that there are, but it just seems to me kind of a shame to bash at something that is overall good just because there's a little bad in it.
I don't remember bashing at the overall good. I'm simply questioning why people still don't do these things that apparently at one time pleased God.
I don't know. It just seems you're taking...
No, it seems to me that, it's people like yourself, the pick and choosers, who have decided, I don't like that, so I'm not going to do that. And, this is okay because it's, basically affects someone else, so I'll enforce that.
I don't know. It just seems you're taking, kind of a fun attitude to it, like let's just, go out and bash Christians and have a good old time.
Gary, don't you find it, outrageously amusing that men used to, shake each other's penises to seal a deal? I mean, don't you find that amusing?
Well, to be honest with you, yes.
Well, then what the hell are you, griping at me for finding it amusing?
Well, I don't know. It just, it just bothers me, in a way. I can't really argue with you, but it just seems that, what's the point, what's the point?
What's the point?
Yeah.
I think the point is that there are people, perhaps like yourself, who would tell me that that book contains all the wisdom in the world and that I should follow it.
Well...
And, gee, while reading it, I just don't know which ones to follow and which ones not to.
Well, how about what makes logical sense to you,
Well, Gary, to tell you the truth, shaking a guy's penis to seal a deal makes just as much sense as most of the stuff in there.
Forward News Radio 970 WFLA's Bob Lassiter.
Minutes after the hour of 1 o'clock. Welcome back. Hour number 2 on a Wednesday, October the 19th, 1988. That little old troublemaker me Lassiter with you until 3. I was sitting down the other night, and I was going through my Bible. You know, I love to go through my Bible. It's a great source of amusement for me and recreation. And the Bible is filled with all kinds of things that, you know, are abominations in God's eyes, or that you can be struck down with, or, you know, all this kind of stuff. And, you know, most of it I agree with. You know, most of it's an abomination in my eyes, too. But I came across a really curious practice. I mean, a really, really curious practice that nowhere in there does it say it's an abomination. Nowhere in there does it say you're going to be struck down if you do it. It's right there in the good old Bible, and people have stopped doing this. And this was something that was really important back then. It's covered at least 4 times. At least 4 times. I mean, hell, I'll even quote to you chapter and verse here. Where is it? Okay, we've got Genesis 24, Genesis 47, Chronicles 29, and Kings, that's 1 Chronicles, and 1 Kings 12. Now, that's 4 times at least that I found. It's probably in there even more than that. And I just thought, holy moly, why aren't people doing this? This, you know, whoa, people have stopped doing this. People have stopped doing it, not because God said to stop doing it. It must have been okay with God then, and I guess it would be okay with him now. And I thought, wow, I better bring this to the attention of the Bible believers. And what I'm referring to is that in the good old days, guys like Abraham and David and Solomon, you know, they used to seal a deal by touching each other's private parts. You know, you would make an oath, and while you were making that oath, you would touch somebody's, well, private parts, naughty parts. Call them what you will. I guess most of you call them naughty parts now. They would touch the other guy's naughty parts, and that would be an indication that, you know, hey, I really mean this. And people don't do it anymore. And I better bring this to people's attention because, you know, apparently this is one of those things that was overlooked. And when you say things like that, when a woman bears a male child, she's unclean for a week, but when she bears a female child, she's unclean for 2 weeks. I mean, come on, that's looking down on women, Kim, no matter how you want to cut it.
No, wait a minute. Let's take a look at that. Okay, number one, when a woman has a child now, okay, bearing the difference of that in mind, when a woman has a child now, a doctor tells her that she should not engage in sexual acts for about a week to give her body a chance to cleanse itself out.
Yeah, but God said, but God said if you have a female child, you can't do it for 2 weeks because you're not clean. And God said it's okay if you're short on money to sell one of your girls, but it's not okay to sell one of your boys if you're short on money.
I'm not arguing that it was something that we're looking at and looking back and saying.
Do you think it's still okay? Do you think it's still okay with
looking back and saying it's wrong the way we see it?
Kim, do you think it's still okay with God to sell one of your kids if you're a little short on money, as long as it's a female? Because I don't remember any place in there where he said he changed his mind on that. So I guess it's still okay with him.
No, I don't know either if that's okay, but I doubt if it is.
And that was more than custom. That was law.
Mosaic laws that were there that were put to rest when Christ came.
I beg your pardon. That's not true. That's not true. Do you have your Bible with you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I would ask you to turn to Matthew chapter 6, or chapter 5, rather, verse 9, or 17, excuse me. That's Matthew 5:17.
Wait. We're going to 6?
No, 5. Matthew 5:17.
Matthew 5:17.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I'm reading from the New International Version. That's why the language is kind of modern. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth. Until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commandments will be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
Okay, and also,
it's not all been fulfilled yet.
Now, wait a minute. Now, let's go in. We're going to talk about that, then let's go into this.
Sure.
At that time, okay, Jesus is talking to the group, okay, and this is the group, which is the multitude on the mountain.
That's right.
Okay. And they are discussing, they're discussing what is going to happen here. What is your reason of being here?
No, what they were discussing is how Jesus wanted people to live. That's precisely what the Sermon on the Mount was discussing. It wasn't a theoretical discussion. It wasn't a theological discussion. These were the words of Jesus telling people what to do.
No. They were... Jesus spoke in parables, okay? And a parable is something that gives you an idea of what is that you need to think about.
Well, a parable is kind of like... A parable is another word for an analogy. In the words that I just read to you, they could not be mistaken in any shape, manner, or form for an analogy. They're quite clear and specific.
Well, see, with my reading of all of them, as you read on through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, what he comes about here, and he's talking about, I'm agreeing with you to a point, that this is true. I have not come to take the laws away. But he's talking to the Israelites, and he's telling them, I'm not taking your laws away.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
I'm coming
you better follow those laws.
I am coming to fulfill the law, which he is talking about back in when they're talking in the Bible of the Messiah coming. He's saying, I am the Messiah. I have fulfilled that law.
Well, no. What he is saying is I have fulfilled that part.
Wait.
No, what he is saying, and it's as clear as daylight here, I have fulfilled that part of the prophecy, but until all of the prophecy is fulfilled, the law stands.
And if you go on to read, which you'll find, like if you go on and you read into Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they are talking about things that will happen to fulfill the final bits of the prophecy.
Right, for example, like the temple being rebuilt.
The end of the world, which is what they are talking about there.
Right, and the world hasn't ended yet, and the temple hasn't been rebuilt, so the old law still applies.
Wait. No, it doesn't.
According to Jesus.
No, it doesn't, because Jesus, when he's talking about the
Kim,
temple, he went to the priest.
Kim, do you want me to take your word for it or Jesus' word for it?
He went to the priest, and you can read it when you read all your parts consisting of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. When he went to the priest, he says, let me rebuild the temple. And I shall rebuild your temple within 3 days. Okay?
And he didn't.
He did not because the priest did not turn over his temple. And
so it hasn't been fulfilled yet.
The Bible goes on to say that, confuse yourself not, the temple that Christ was talking about was the temple of the body. Meaning that he was asking the priest to turn himself over to Christ. Christ was going to give him the knowledge and let him know that the truth was there.
Yeah, well, that's all fine and well, but the bottom line is the prophecy hasn't been fulfilled yet. That's the bottom line. Not whether or not somebody blocked it, that's irrelevant. Or whether or not somebody wasn't in favor of it, that's irrelevant. The prophecy hasn't been fulfilled yet, right?
The prophecy will be fulfilled when the people allow themselves to accept the two major commandments that Christ left on this earth. And that's when the prophecy would be fulfilled.
Yeah, but it seems to me anybody that believes in the Bible is the Word of God, it better be very, very concerned about keeping those old laws, too, especially considering that there seems to be some discrepancy here as to whether or not the old laws are still valid.
I don't feel that a lot of the old laws are valid.
Jesus said they were.
Because they were set down for people to realize that the Jewish people were different than the people at that time.
You mean like the special potion that would tell whether or not a woman was faithful?
Oh, that one's good. And let's talk about that one. How good is psychology?
How good is psychology?
How good is psychology?
Well, I suppose the earliest psychologist known to man is the one that wrote that one.
I think it's great psychology.
Oh, it's fantastic psychology.
And that's
because you and I both know that there was no magic potion.
Right.
Even though it says clearly that there was.
What I'm saying is that if a woman, stop and think, here's a woman...
Whoa, Kim, wait a second. I think wait a second. You stumbled on something. They came up with this, knowing that it would scare the hell, if you'll pardon the expression, out of women so that they wouldn't be unfaithful, right? Is it possible that they came up with this heaven and hell thing to scare the hell out of people so that they wouldn't do wrong to each other? And that both are frauds.
Wait. I agree with you on that point. I agree there is a very different meaning from the true meaning of what people conceive and what really is. Okay? I mean, I don't... people, when they say hell is brimstone fire and it's going to rain on you, I don't think it's that type of hell. Okay? And
of course, it says it is like that in the book.
Huh?
Of course, it says it's like that in the book.
It says it's like Shlom. And Shalom is like the garbage pit, meaning that it is the garbage of the land that shall lay in it.
Well, now you're talking the Old Testament. The New Testament, of course.
In the New Testament, Jesus is the one that walks over to the garbage pit, and they're talking about what is hell like, and he said it's like Shalom, and Shalom is nothing more than at that time where the people used to throw the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it shall be the garbage of my people.
Well, of course, in dreams later on in the book, they get much more vivid about it.
Oh. Well, it's no more than taking the part about the three days here and not connecting it to the parts where it goes into more explanation to Matthew, into Luke, into John. Because the thing is that by reading all four, you have to read Matthew,
Kim,
Mark, Luke, and John.
Kim, I'm getting behind on a break, and you just said a word that triggered something in me. I want to make sure I've got your vote on this correctly when you mention parts. You are not in favor of going back to the good old, secret handshake there. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate the call.
Bye.
You're tooting your flute. Paul in Clearwater. Paul, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, Paul.
I know that no one gets anywhere by arguing with you. I just, would like to comment that, now I'll have to, I'd be a fool not to question anything you tell me.
Well, why is that, Paul?
Well, because you had talked about how all these beliefs were near and dear to people's hearts, and you were wrong to mess with them and wrong to ridicule
Paul,
them.
I believe we talked about the belief in God being near and dear to people's hearts.
Well, what I'm saying, though, is that maybe there are inconsistencies in it, but all this is entertainment for you and a few others.
Paul, this is not an inconsistency. This is an absurdity.
All this is entertainment for you and a few others.
Next Tuesday I'll be doing inconsistencies. Today we're just talking about utter absurdities.
This is just entertainment for you and a few other, people out there, to get poor old people on the phone and rip their book apart. And I really believe that you'd still discuss religious issues and you'd still, point out, where the church was wrong and all that, but you weren't going to, just ridicule, Bible-believing people. And I'm not a fundamentalist by any stretch of the imagination. But, I thought you were no longer going to just hold these people up to ridicule. And he just...
Well, Paul, let's see if we can't dissect this here. My position on religion and, the Judeo-Christian concept of God is well known, and I'm have no intention of going into that today whatsoever. But let us suppose for a moment here that these are major issues with God. And, apparently they must be. They're in his book. And let us suppose that God might be up there festering because people aren't doing these things anymore. And, you're not going to hear a discussion like this on Channel 22. No, they keep talking about the reward. And, for example, do you remember when God killed thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people just because they wanted to change in their diet? And then because they complained about, oh, manna every day. Come on, God, can't we come up with something else? And he killed them?
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe he's getting ready to do something like that because we don't seal deals the way we used to. It's possible, isn't it, Paul?
I would find it unlikely.
You'd find it unlikely. Well, would you find it likely that God would have killed people for complaining about their diets?
I don't even know if that's valid.
I wouldn't think he would have done something like that, would you?
I don't even think that that's even valid to what I'm trying to get across. It just seems.
Well, Paul, wait a second, Paul, you're the one who assumes that I'm ridiculing, and this might actually be a very, very thought-provoking conversation for people who take the word literally.
Oh, come on, Bob, you and I know better. You're just back to your good old days of let's get the poor old people up on the phone.
Well, Paul, one man's feast is another man's folly. So, maybe it is folly for me, but it could be food for thought for some other people.
Well, it just, to me, all I want to say is just, now I'll just have to question. Anytime you say anything at all, I'll have to ask
Doesn't bother me in the least, Paul. I'm not here. Paul, I'm not running for office. I'm not here to make friends. I'm just here to question life.
Well, I guess so, but I always thought that one of the things that mattered to you is credibility.
Oh, it does, very much.
Well, you've lost any that you had with me.
Well, such is life. If you can't deal with reality, what can I say about it?
Well,
I mean, Paul, someday you're going to be called into court probably and asked to put your hand upon this book that contains these things in it. and, swear a solemn oath.
A lot of it, Bob, is all ceremony and metaphor anyway, and it just seems...
Well, maybe it's all ceremony and metaphor.
It may very well be, but it just seems to...
Well, then, Paul, if it well may be ceremony and metaphor, don't you think it ought to be exposed to such? So that people don't devote their entire lives to somebody else's joke?
If it's all these old people have, I don't see what the point is in taking it away from them.
Well, maybe we can find something else to replace it for them with.
Such as?
Reality.
Well, apparently...
Instead of what you have already conceded might just be empty dreams.
Well, apparently these people find nothing in reality, and this may be what they want. I really can't see the purpose.
Well, Paul, there's another possibility, too. And it seems to be one that you're willing to just gloss over.
Such as?
It may actually be the gospel truth. And therefore it should be exposed and proven as such, shouldn't it?
It very well may be, but I think if God is as great and as loving as a lot of Christians like to portray him as, I think that he would have been down here by now to give us in person what he wants us to do.
So in other words, you're telling me you don't believe in it?
I believe in the concept of God. I'm probably a lot closer to you than to the Christians. I believe that there very well may be a creative force, and I won't discount the Bible. To me, today what I'm trying to say is it just seems that you're just, once again back on, let's hold these people up, as a sideshow.
Well, Paul, excuse me while I'm lighting a cigarette here. I'm taking this conversation very seriously with you. Let's look at it this way. If it is all true, if this God that is spoken of in the Bible is precisely as he is purported to be, then there's some things that he takes that you and I wouldn't take very seriously that he takes very, very seriously.
Granted.
And I don't see how you can possibly have an intelligent discussion on the Bible or God, the concept of God, or really anything else, unless you bring into the discussion some of the things that just don't jibe very well. Some of the things that, some of the pieces to the puzzle that just don't fit very well. I mean, if you get 12 guys sitting around saying, God is great, no, God's good, no, God's great, no, God's good, well, then you don't really accomplish anything. But if you get 12 people sitting around and 6 of them are arguing one side and 6 of them are arguing the other side, then you're much more likely to arrive upon the truth than when you just have a one-sided argument.
Well, I really have, really no problem with that. It just seems the whole spirit of the way you're going about this today. Like when you had the priest on, I had absolutely no problem. You brought up some valid questions about the Catholic Church, and
that's right.
I found it a very interesting and enlightening show. All right, but it just seems today that it's just back to more fun and games, and and let's just get the people out of the woodwork.
Paul, it is to a degree fun and games. I will concede that. You'd have to be a fool not to realize that, and you're obviously not a fool, and it is fun and games to a degree, but it is also part of a very, very serious discussion because of the fact that there are tens of millions of people in this country who, without having really read it, accept it, who defend it passionately without really knowing what they're defending. Now, some of these people are moving into public life. Some of these people don't really believe it, but say that they do who are in public life. I think before we say that this book contains all the wisdom in the world, we explore just some of the stuff that is in it.
Oh, I have no argument with that.
Let me give you an example. The book, the Old Testament, the King James version of the Bible, speaks of unicorns. It speaks of winged, fire-breathing serpents. This version that I have in front of me today, which is the New International Version, has taken into account that most people today don't believe in unicorns. So unicorns in this version of the Bible have now become wild boars. And winged, fire-breathing serpents have now just become snakes that jump up and bite you. In other words, they have gone through the Bible and they've taken some of the absurdities out, because we all know there aren't unicorns. There never were unicorns, and we all know that there weren't winged, fire-breathing serpents. We all know that. And so in this latest translation, they have cleaned up some of the absurdities, and I have no great problem with that. But why not clean up all of them? Why not, for example, if you can take out the unicorns, why can't you take out this ridiculous magic potion that will make unfaithful wives rot in the loins?
Well,
So that's what discussions like this are designed to get people talking about.
Well, in that light, I can't find, a real argument, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that it just it just seems that maybe there are absurdities in it, but there's also a lot of good things in it, and it just it just seems like it's sort of like, let me give you an analogy. It's sort of like if you have a really good house built and there's like one flaw in it. It seems like, or maybe a couple of little flaws, and it seems like that you're overlooking all of the good workmanship in the house, and you're screaming and yelling about the flaws.
Well, you know why I do that, Paul? And I can give you a valid, honest answer that I can prove consistently I have done. I have been in this market for 3 years. Once a year, for all of those 3 years, I have delivered to my audience one of the most beautiful, one of the most sensible sections in the Bible. It's called the Sermon on the Mount.
I know.
And, Paul, when I deliver the Sermon on the Mount to my audience in the form of a modern language monologue, my phones are filled with people screaming communist.
I know.
Screaming faggot, screaming go back to Russia, screaming your father's a nigger, screaming your dog should die. I know that there's some beautiful, beautiful parts of the Bible and parts of the Bible that I subscribe to wholeheartedly. But unless and until we can clear up some of this other nonsense that's in there, the book is not valid.
Well, I know. I've listened to you for the whole 3 years, and I heard you, one time when you delivered the Sermon on the Mount in modern language, and you got call after call accusing you of being a communist. So, I know what you're saying is valid, but I guess all I'm trying to say is, I kind of understand now what you're doing, and I guess, I kind of...
You got to get people's attention, Paul.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
And talking about the old magic handshake with a Wang, Dang, Doodle does it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Thank you, my friend. An excellent call.
All right.
Brought up an interesting point here this morning. I think you really have to look at it, and take it into contrast. Back then, these people were not, of the technological age. And, they walked around in sheets and sandals. So, today, like an executive, you're in the office and a new guy walks in, it'd be kind of hard to unzip and, greet him in that manner. Don't get me wrong, I do have strong religious convictions. And trying to keep with...
Well, I don't know. I think it'd be a lot easier today to just, zip out the old zipper there than to, hike up the old skirt.
All right. Well, I believe that, trying to keep within, following these guidelines and morals of the Bible, I would feel, or, take it upon myself just to whip it out and shake it for myself,
Well, that's an abomination. No, that's going to get you in trouble, Randy. If you, shake it yourself, then now you're in big trouble.
Well, I'd hate to ask my partner at work or something, hey, do you mind greeting me like this every morning, or should we just shake hands?
Well, all depends on how much you believe the book there, and what you're willing to risk and what you're not. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it. Be good.
There are two parts of the Bible. It's considered law is one part, and the other part is gospel. And the law has been replaced according to the Bible. In other words, Christ is saying that you can't follow the Ten Commandments. No one can ever follow the Ten Commandments. You'll slip on one of them somewhere. So in the Sermon on the Mount, he honed...
I beg your pardon. I don't find the Ten Commandments very difficult to follow, do you?
Yes, extremely hard to follow.
I beg your pardon. I think most people go through their lives, in essence, in full compliance with the Ten Commandments.
No, because it even includes a jealousy or lusting after would be no more than a daydream. In other words, I sit by and just daydream something. My neighbor has a great car, and I'm daydreaming, gee, I'd like to have a great car. I'm, in effect, lusting after my neighbor.
Well, I think that most reasonable people would conclude that what Jesus was speaking of, or what God the Father was speaking of in dictating the Ten Commandments concerning lusting after someone, is do not desire someone else's goods to the point where it becomes an obsession with you. I don't think there's anything...
If you read a little further into the epistles, you'll see where Paul quite clearly
Well, no, wait a second.
You can't live without sin.
Well, wait a second. You want to bring in another dude into this, or would you like to, keep it to the two dudes that made the laws? Or do you want to bring in somebody else's interpretation of those two?
No, that's not anybody else's interpretation. The apostles were pretty well schooled. They were the students of Jesus.
And well, by the way, there are an awful lot of people that seem to think that Paul was not he was not a contemporary of Jesus, right?
He was brought in later.
He was not a contemporary. He never met the man. The obviously very pertinent question as to whether or not we should return to the old ways of shaking each other's wang dang doodles in order to seal a deal. And then my producer, Michael, brought up a very interesting point. He said, either there was an oversight here or women were not intended to be, involved in oath-making and getting involved in contracts and things of that nature, since there really isn't any corresponding, thing to shake. A hardcore hippie in Tampa. Hippie, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hi, Bob.
Hi there.
If you would allow me just a real brief digression for just a moment. I wanted to say that your show yesterday was moving, and by the time you got to your theme song there, what was it now? Take It to the Limit. I was literally in tears.
Well, that was the day before yesterday.
I'd like to nominate Mookie for the official Tom and Lutz impersonator.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say was basically that magic, with the K at the end, is nothing but your power to change your surroundings. Does that apply at all to what you're talking about?
Does that apply to what?
To what you're discussing?
Shaking each other's wang dang doodles?
Well, there's been a lot of rituals that have to do with that. Magical rituals.
Well, there's still a few rituals that do, at least in my house anyway, but that's beside the point.
I'm sorry?
I said there still are some rituals that have to do with it, but,
well, that's where most magic lies, and most true religion.
Well, sometimes it can be magic.
I'm sorry?
Sometimes it can be magic.
Well, okay. But that's where basically the religion lies. True religion, wouldn't you think, relies on ritual?
Well, this didn't really say anything that it had to do with religion. It's just, it was a way of life, and it, was apparently okay with God. See, most of the Bible doesn't really have, especially the Old Testament, doesn't really have anything to do with religion. It's just telling you how to live your life. The things you're supposed to do, the things you're not supposed to do.
Right, ritualistic. Right.
Well, you can call it ritual. I suppose everything is ritual if you want to get down to it to that point.
But some rituals mean more than others.
Well, somebody grabs your wang dang doodle, it means something to you as a general rule of thumb. Especially if he grabs too hard.
Did you know that December 25th...
He's up off a wang dang doodle there.
Did you know that December 25th, the day that we celebrate Christmas, or actually celebrate the birth of Jesus, if you will, is actually traditionally it's the birthday of the ancient Sumerian war god Marduk. And I've always heard that was who the original concept of YHWH, Yahweh, the name that could not be spoken. That was an extension of that war god.
Well, it is very difficult to pronounce that word, even if you're not on drugs. James in St. Petersburg. James, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Bob.
Hi, James.
Yeah, Bob, I think you're right. Everybody, has a Bible, but not too many people read it. But like you, I do read the Bible, and I have for years, and I do run across, verses that I do not understand. And one was in Corinthians 1 Corinthians 1:25. Would you read that?
1 Corinthians, well, why don't you read it to us?
Well, I don't have a Bible. I was just reading it last night. It was 1 Corinthians 1:25, and then and it was also in Corinthians 3:19, and I didn't understand them.
You didn't understand them?
It was more like a paradox,
Well, as a general rule of thumb, I don't do Bible readings, to help people understand them or anything like that. But 1:25? Okay, let's see here. And you didn't understand this. You don't have it with you, you silly boy. For the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than man's strength.
And 3:19.
And 3:19.
Yeah.
God, we're getting requests now. Let's make this a request line for you. Have Lassiter read your favorite Bible quotation. 3:19. Okay. For the wisdom of the world is foolishness in God's sight, as it is written, He catches the wise in their craftiness.
Can you explain those?
No, I don't attempt to explain anything.
Well,
I just attempt to point out what it says.
I mean, well, what do you think those mean? Those two verses mean?
Wouldn't have the vaguest. What do you think they mean?
Well, I don't know. That's why I was calling you. You seem to, you read the Bible and I read it, but I run across stuff I don't understand like you do.
Mm-hmm. But you just happen to remember chapter and verse.
Yeah, because I was just reading it last night.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a pretty good, memory.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know about Genesis. That's why I call. I didn't realize that in Genesis. I don't read that too much because it's too hard to understand. But the New Testament's, it's not quite as hard to understand as the Old Testament.
Well, I think they do a number of shows over at Channel 22 where you can call in with questions like that, and they'll have an instant analysis.
Shaking the, what do you call it?
Wang Dang Doodle.
Wang Dang Doodle.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the Jews in those days, they did shake it, but somebody like you would probably suck it.
Mm-hmm. And I'll bet you've been dreaming of having me do that for you for a long time, haven't you? Keep on dreaming. Karen in Clearwater. Karen, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yes. Well, your producer more or less spoiled it for me. I was going to ask you if a man and a woman made an agreement, what would the man shake?
Well, I can't begin to imagine. It's going to trouble me all night. Maybe even most of tomorrow, too.
Really?
Possibly even into Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, it raises some very interesting questions without any real answers, so to speak.
I know. There would have to be something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you ask me, I think the makers of, men's underwear read that in the Bible.
Well, I'm not so sure about those jockey shorts, but the boxer shorts for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. The jockey shorts are probably made by godless heathens. I mean, what other possible explanation is there, especially considering they're so easy to put on backwards, too?
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, bye.
Don, that was his opinion. That's the way he wanted to see it, but that's clearly not what Jesus said at all.
All right. Well, as I said before in Galatians, and third chapter of Galatians, when he was talking about it, said, is the law then contrary to the promises of God? Said no. Said if the law had been given which was able to impart life, then righteousness would have been based on
exactly. He was trying to wiggle out there out from underneath some of those things he didn't like.
And it said, therefore the law has
probably
become
into pork and that kind of stuff.
It says, therefore the law has become our tutor to lead us to Christ, that we may be justified by faith. But now that faith has come, we are no longer under a tutor.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're not discussing Paul. I couldn't care less what Paul said. I would be only interested in what Jesus said.
All the Bible has to agree. Every bit of it has to agree.
And unfortunately, it doesn't.
In any part of it, then you have
contradictions all over it.
Pardon me?
You have contradictions all over it.
Which one?
New and Old Testament.
Where at?
How many hours do you have?
I've got plenty of time.
You got plenty of time?
I've got on here to name me one of them.
Will you settle for just one?
Sure, I'll settle for any of them.
Okay, Proverbs 12. Lying lips are abomination to the Lord. Okay, you familiar with that one? Have you ever heard that one before?
Proverbs 12.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Well, then let me take you to 1 Kings, where it says, now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all those, of all these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee. See, contradiction. Win some, lose some, huh?
News Radio. I'm Don Richards. Now more with News Radio 970 WFLA's Bob Lassiter.
Seven minutes after the hour, 2 o'clock. Welcome back. Third and final hour for this Wednesday, October the 19th, 1988, the day that we tackled the secret handshake. I was just talking to Norman back at the office there, and he brought up something very interesting. You know, there's a group called the Masons, right? And they have these secret orientations and meetings and rituals. And Norman was pointing out that these guys wear aprons, right? And that nobody really knows what goes on in those, 33rd degree initiations. And I wonder if it's a secret handshake. It would be very convenient with the apron on. George in Tampa. George, you're on the air at 970 WFLA. Hi, George.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
I think it's been a very interesting show. My own feeling is that what it has really been boiling down to, as far as a lot of people's problems with the show, is simply whether you should do a show like this or not.
Well, why shouldn't I?
I believe you should. I'd like to explain the real argument as I see it. I think it's a valid one that we should think about. You brought it up before. You were saying, well, shouldn't...
No, be careful of the phrases you use here, considering the subject matter.
Okay, I'll try my best.
Yeah, I know it's difficult.
I think the real question is then, does evaluating the truth of the Bible outweigh the potential harm that such knowledge and disappointment would do to, or would have on fragile believers? The one gentleman who had called up just kept saying, what about the old ladies? Are you doing this to make fun of the old people? And I think that's a question there.
Well, I suppose most of the elderly people have already met their maker, when the show started at noon, and we brought up the topic.
That's true. But I guess a lot of people do have problems looking into a subject like that. And as you always say, the pickers and choosers of the Bible. I think another question would be, obviously you're bringing up, does this make the Bible invalid? Either the whole of it or parts of it, by bringing light to some inconsistencies, does that make the entire Bible invalid?
Mm-hmm.
And certainly you could look at some people who've achieved quite a bit by being pickers and choosers, say a Martin Luther King, someone who is able to make something positive out of, I guess some of his favorite parts of the Bible, or at least his interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think really a lot of that boils down, and a lot of people are really having problems with it. But I think that they have to keep that kind of a question in mind.
Well, you see, there would be any number of people who would say the entire concept of salvation is in and of itself absurd. Well, it's difficult to argue whether or not it is absurd, so let's come down to levels where we might be able to, for example, the magic potion to determine unfaithfulness amongst women. Now, if we can somehow prove that not to be absurd, then it makes it so much easier to believe the rest.
But again, I mean, would your position then be that the whole of the Bible is untrue, or the Bible shouldn't be looked at for truth?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the whole of the Bible. Are you saying, is there a God? Is there an afterlife?
Well, what would be your position for the pickers and choosers? Would you look at that as an unreasonable position to pick and choose, the ones that you find not...
Yes, I do find it to be utterly and totally and completely unreasonable. It's either all true or it isn't.
What would you say to, say, a Martin Luther King or someone like that? Well, how do you look at that? Someone or a Mother Teresa, let's say.
Well, first of all, almost no one gets involved in the better parts of the Bible. People get involved in the Bible to try to enforce their prejudices or views on other people. They rarely speak. For example, the Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount's pretty damn tough to live. Now, we all know that it's the right way to live, and it's the best way to live, just as we all knew that it was the right way and the best way not to treat people like dogs, just because they were of a different color. That didn't come from the Bible per se. That came from we know that it's wrong to treat other human beings as less than human.
Exactly.
And, that didn't come from the Bible.
I think that's the importance of your show and your topic today anyway, is that, what is to stop someone, if they're saying all the Bible is true, what is to stop them from then enforcing their ideas about blacks or women or any number of these inconsistencies you brought up?
Like we had a caller on earlier, I guess it was in the first hour, who pointed out, clearly this magic potion to test unfaithfulness was nothing more than a psychological ploy. Who in his right mind is going to gamble on this one? Right? Ho, ho, ho! Well, then, therefore, it becomes a valid question. Well, maybe this whole concept of heaven and hell, punishment and reward, is just a psychological ploy to keep people from doing what they might otherwise want to do, like being unfaithful.
Right. Very interesting. I'll keep listening, Bob.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Wolfgang at USF. Hi, Wolfgang. You're on the air.
Hey, put her there, Bob.
Whoa, keep that thing in there.
Hey, did I understand you correctly to say that, what's that word you use, ding-dong? Ding-dang-doodle?
Or something like Wang-dang-doodle, Wang-dang-doodle.
Yeah, did I understand you correctly that you said that women don't have them?
Well, not easily grasped.
Oh,
I mean, I appreciate
that. Homologous anatomical structures, and they certainly do have one. It's just not as large in most women, although they have been measured as large as 4.5, 5 inches.
You're kidding me.
No.
Whoa!
Yeah, it's in the medical library.
Katie, bar the door.
Yeah.
So to speak.
But I just wanted to point that out. This whole topic, it just amazes me how basically what's a product of the Middle Ages, which Orthodox Christianity really is, how that kind of baloney is so powerful.
Whoa, hold on there, Wolfgang. I would point out to you that this is still a practice in certain parts of the world.
What's that? Orthodox Christianity?
No, grasping the old Wang Dang Doodle.
What part of the
good
world?
Faith. Primarily the Middle East.
In the Middle East? What countries?
There are some tribes in the Middle East that, my reference material tells me. I have no personal knowledge of this, Wolfgang.
Would they be Jewish tribes or
I believe they're
tribes?
Muslims.
Pardon me?
I believe they would be Muslim.
Muslim.
Mm-hmm. Who, of course, the roots of their faith also come from Judaism and Christianity.
That's true. The roots, did you say?
Yeah.
You better watch your terminology there.
Well, yes, I suppose you're right. This is, you really have to be careful in a show like this.
Sure do.
Like I was coming down the hall and Norman
coming down the hall?
And Norman pointed out to me that, I'm up against Jack Ellery now. And he said, I know that's going to be hard on you. And I said, whoa!
Just like he was coming down the hall, yeah.
No.
Yeah. I have something else here I wanted to ask you. What did Jimmy Swagger tell his wife before he left in the wee hours of the morning to go down to the sleazy motel?
Gee, I haven't the vaguest idea, Wolfgang.
He said he was going to go watch Murphy in the Morning.
Whoa! Thank you, Wolfgang. You really think that God sitting in heaven, this just, merciful, loving God, would really be ticked off with you if you did eat leavened bread? I mean, do you really think that that's that important to him?
Well, I'll tell you what I might suggest. I believe that it's important not to cause your neighbor to stumble, and that when they're talking about eating meat that had been sacrificed to idols or whatever, and if you in your psyche do not believe that it's going to be punishable by any great retribution, but your neighbor does, I might obey that particular law so that I would not cause my neighbor to stumble or to...
Well, Tony, let's go back and look at that law. Remember, you basically burnt the fat but gave the lean to the rabbi?
I believe it was to the Levites.
Well, right. Who were the forerunners of the
Exactly.
rabbi,
May I
the
tell
priest.
you why they were? They did not have any particular job that would earn them any particular money.
Yeah, bingo.
Right.
Remember, it was an abomination in God's eyes to eat the fat.
But they would...
You weren't allowed to eat fat. You could only eat lean meat. So therefore, you could only sacrifice the fat to God, but the lean meat went to the priest and his family.
Well, they're set apart as holy for God.
Well, that's what
You
they
know
told
what I'm
us. That's what they told us. They also said, gee, we didn't get a piece of the land here, so therefore you give us 10%. We didn't get our 1/12 of the land.
Right.
So therefore you give us 10% of everything you have. That sounds to me like some pretty shrewd deal in there.
Let me suggest that C.S. Lewis, who said that the worst and the best case for Christianity are other Christians. Do you follow?
Absolutely.
And that we can't look to people's lives per se, because I guarantee that very few are really living the walk. But
well, Tony, when I stop by a church or a temple or tune in a religious service, more often than not, I'm likely to hear about tithing than I am about mercy and forgiveness and justice. But sometime the next couple of days, there will be a special evening edition. Beth in Clearwater. Beth, where do you stand on the old Wang Dang Doodle Shake?
Hello?
Yeah, hi, Beth.
I'm calling about a book that I think you would be very interested in.
Uh-huh. Where do you stand on the old Wang Dang Doodle Shake?
A satire on the Bible, Well, I'll Be Damned, by Douglas Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And the first line is...
Would you like to see the old Wang Dang Doodle Shake come back, Beth?
I don't know. You may find it in the book.
Well, it's there. It's 4 times at least.
God instructing his son, getting him ready to come to earth, and telling him what has gone on before he came. The first line is, I, God, created the universe and put Adam together out of dust, and I gave him a wife. I made my first mistake, a talking snake.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Take care there, honey. Don't hurt yourself on the way out. Ed in Gulfport. Ed, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, Ed.
I think there's one thing that you may have overlooked in this whole issue, and that is that we haven't had enough chat with Bob shows.
Well, I know that's about all you're able to deal with, isn't it? Sometimes it's, I would disagree with that. God couldn't possibly be anything but merciful, just, and loving.
Oh, well, sometimes it is. Sometimes it ain't.
Mm-hmm. So we have a heathen on the phone here.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not a heathen. You're the one that's the heathen, Mr. Lassiter.
Oh, how's that?
If I may say so. What they ought to do, in my opinion, is they ought to arrest and take you to court.
Arrest and take me to court, yeah.
Yes, sir. And convict you and sentence you
Convict me on what?
Sentence you to about...
Convict me on what charge, sir?
Well, for being a heretic, more or less.
Oh, a heretic.
Yes, sir.
Well, this may come as a great surprise to you, Delbert, but being a heretic is not against the law of the United States of America.
No, but if I had my way, it would be.
Oh, I see.
And then
it'd be so much easier, wouldn't it, Delbert, if you didn't have to listen to an opposing view, especially one that made sense?
Well, that's your opinion. But then
no, it's the truth.
They'll sentence you then, Mr. Lassiter, they'll sentence you to 200 community service hours at church to listen to every word the preacher has to say. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, you didn't say anything, Delbert. Yeah.
I see. So it's not a discussion whether there is a God or isn't a God.
That's right.
May I
Since nobody can answer that question.
May I just put out one thought that would probably help a lot of people? Very common sense.
Don't know that any people need help.
Whether they believe in God or not is very simply this. In a matter of creation.
So you're going to continue along with your personal testimony, even though you've already been told clearly that this is not a show about whether or not God exists.
Okay. But this is very important.
Did God make up a magic? Well, I think it's very important as to whether or not God made a magic potion that would make a woman's thighs rot if she had ever been unfaithful to her husband. Think he did that?
I reserve comment on that.
What do you mean you reserve comment on it?
Well,
it's yes or no or you're gone.
Because I haven't had a chance to think about that, and I would like to give a logical answer.
Well, you'd like to give a logical answer as to whether or not God made up a magic potion that would make an unfaithful woman's thighs rot? There's a logical answer to that?
I haven't even thought about that, Bob. I just wanted to make a statement that the first baby that...
Well, then get your own damn talk show if all you want to do is make statements. For God's sake, Brian in Tampa, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hello, Bob.
Hi, Brian.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I think it'd be a good thing, this old handshake. I think it'd be nice.
Oh, really, Brian? You like to walk around grabbing guys' Wang dang doodles all the time?
When I'm in the mood, but I'd like to see...
one of those.
I'd like to see Gorbachev and Reagan seal a deal by touching each other's genitals.
Well, that would...
Then possibly see Gorbachev leak it to the papers how soft Reagan really was.
Leak it to the papers. I mean, you got to be real careful here with the kind of language you choose.
Well...
That is a rather interesting thought, seeing the two of them there. Hey, I'll shake on that.
All right, Bob.
Whoa, not so hard, Gorby, not so hard. I'm an old guy. 990 Glenn in Pinellas Park. Hi, Glenn. You're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Glenn.
The magic potion.
Yeah, the magic potion.
I know. That's
kind of fascinated with the prospect.
That's ridiculous. You know, I
don't know. It's kind of...
I believe I believe in God, but I don't believe in that. I'm here to tell you right now, and people say, well, if you...
Well, but wait a second, Glenn. You see, the guy that gave you the magic potion, which, it's Moses, is the same guy that told you that God was real. So, what was he fibbing one time and not the other?
Who knows?
Well, I think it's a valid question, don't you?
Yep.
I mean, if the magic potion is utterly absurd, then maybe the whole thing is absurd.
Well, just like... Where was it at? You were talking about God said you could sell your daughter for money, but you couldn't sell your son. Where was that at?
It's in the Old Testament.
Man, see that? I don't know. See, it does contradict itself. The Bible does, and I think it's a good thing what you're doing, trying to bring it out. And these people that disagree with it, talk about chatting with Bob, they just don't want to talk logical. I don't think.
Well,
they don't want to see the light.
Well, all the guy can do is scream into the phone. That's his problem.
That's it.
God will get him for it.
Huh?
God will probably get him for it.
Yeah, make him break up his Wang dang doodle or something.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to talk about, I just wanted to see about, I can't see God saying, you can sell your daughter.
Yes,
for money, but I just can't see that.
Well, you see, the whole problem is, obviously, God didn't say that.
Sure he didn't.
But you see, the guys that purported to talk for God didn't think very much about women. And so, therefore, it was, absolutely, women were just chattel. And it was just absolutely unthinkable to sell a boy. But, what the hell, girls, you can sell them. That's okay if you need the money.
Yeah, my wife wanted to look up that part of it where,
I'm looking for it now.
I got my tape recorder rolling, Robert.
I'll find it before you. I'll find it before the end of the show.
I just want to hear it again.
Okay.
I'm putting it on the tape.
Well, it's there, and I shall find it before the end of the show, even if I have to sit here in silence for 10 minutes looking.
Hey, Bob, you hear a ringing in your telephone?
No.
I mean, I do. It's on this end.
Oh.
Weird. It's like somebody's trying to get through to you.
Well, no.
I'm being serious, too, this time. I hear a ringing in the telephone.
Well, yeah, it happens to all of us from time to time, you know. Years add up. Lots of things happen to me that never used to happen before.
Something else, too, Bob. It talks about, God talking about drinking in the Bible, you know?
Yeah.
It talks about God changed the water into wine. And, well, nowadays, people tell you if you drink, you're going to go to hell.
Well, some people do. I mean, not everybody does.
You know, I mean, drinking to, overextent, that's no good, but I can't see having a glass of wine or having a beer is going to hurt anybody.
Well, I guess it all depends. You know, especially if you're getting involved in Wang, Doodle shaking.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
that
you
does
see?
Make a difference.
Yeah.
So I think too many beers will make you do that, huh?
Well,
glasses of wine.
You know, some people, would be more prone to do that with just a few. But not everybody, I suppose. Still looking for this damn thing.
I don't know. That whole thing about selling your kid just seemed absurd to me. And this magic potion stuff.
Well, the magic potion stuff, for sure, I read that.
Well, I know.
What's so fun is selling your kid.
God, there's talk coming through the telephone now, Bob, besides you.
Talk? Oh, my God. Well, I guess they answered.
I guess.
Well, anyway, I shall
keep... out what it is.
I shall keep looking here. As a matter of fact, I didn't have to take a break, and during the break, I shall continue looking.
Okay.
Be good.
Have a good day, Bob.
You, my son.
Tracy, I dare say that even in this corrupt day and age, if your next-door neighbor was hauled down to the church and made to drink some of this stuff, and her thighs rotted, and she was thrown out into the gutter and died a horrible death with her belly and bowels swelling up, I dare say it would straighten out everybody on the block.
No, that's exactly right. It didn't work then, and it didn't work
Well, Tracy, it didn't work then because it wasn't true.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. You don't know. You weren't there.
Well,
you don't know it wasn't true.
Well, you're right, I was not there.
People say that there's no such thing as Satan cults, and you better wake up and smell the coffee, because there most definitely is, and there's people being sacrificed daily to Satan.
Well, Tracy, then you're telling me that either God changed his mind about the potion, or God made this potion that didn't work, and if God made a potion that didn't work, he must be an imperfect God.
No, he's not an imperfect God. I'm sure that he knew all these things. I think he finally got tired of messing with the Israelites.
Well, wait a second. You're telling me that he made the potion knowing full well that it wouldn't have the effect that he wanted it to have, even before he made it, but he went ahead and made it anyway. That's kind of dumb, isn't it?
That's probably so, because he was already on the
Are you saying God's dumb?
No.
Well, that's what you just said.
No, I did not. No, you said that. I didn't say that.
I said making a potion. I said making a potion in advance, knowing that it's not going to work, is kind of dumb, and you said, yeah.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't say that, Bob. Now, come on.
I did, too.
You didn't say it was dumb. You didn't.
Here, Tracy, drink this for me, would you please? See the rest of you guys tomorrow, and then I'll let you know how it turned out with Tracy.